Hello everyone. Today I'm going to show you how I made some custom molds, and one of them is these acorns that I absolutely love. This other one here is this is a skull mold, and it's a full skull, but I always want to use half skulls so I can stick them onto stuff, just like the face of the skull. So what I'm doing is putting polymer clay into the mold and pushing it down in there. You have to push it down in there real good and make sure it gets into all the nooks and crannies. And then you put it in the freezer for about an hour or two and let it freeze. And then once it's frozen, you pop the skulls out. See, they're adorable. And then you have to let them sit and get room temperature, cut them in half, and that's what I used to make the half face mold. Here I am putting down packing tape, and that's going to stick the Lego box I made for the mold. It's going to stick to the bottom. And I'm just making sure that everything is really tight on there, and that you don't want the silicone to run through. So since the tape is facing up, I just stick the acorn tops and the acorn bottoms on there. I filled the acorn tops are real acorns, and I filled them with polymer clay, and then I made the bottoms out of polymer clay. So that's what you see me doing here, is putting those inside of the mold, making sure that they're stuck down really good. And this mold, I just used a gift box and the I glued the skulls down. And then here I'm putting some Vaseline around the edges, although I don't think it was necessary because the mold ended up coming out really easily. And here I'm using Let's Resin silicone mold maker. Um, it's a two-part, and you do it by weight, and it was super easy. There wasn't any real bad odors or anything. And I did not use that much of it. That stuff's gonna last a long time. I have to figure out what else I want to make molds out of. So many ideas. So I probably mixed it for, I don't know, maybe a couple minutes. This is like speed of 400. And then once it's mixed, you just pour it in. I poured it in pretty slowly. Like I said, this is speed up to 400. And then I made sure that there was quite a bit above it because that's going to end up being the bottom, and you want to make sure that the mold has a pretty sturdy bottom. I was worried that the silicone would go through the Legos, but there was a little bit of bleeding. You'll see when I take them off, but not much at all. Some of it, there was a little bit on the bottom, so if you do that, just make sure that like there's tape on the bottom of it, but just make sure I have a piece of cardboard and then I have parchment paper underneath it just in case. But it didn't get underneath the tape, over the tape at all. It was overall very clean. And now I'm just kind of tapping to get the bubbles to rise up. They recommended that you put it in the freezer for about an hour to help speed up the process, I guess, and get the bubbles out. But I didn't do that because these are really shallow molds, so you could see the bubbles popping. I mean, the bubbles just came up pretty quickly and popped, and I was pretty pleased with it. So this was the day I let it cure for a day, and I started taking them apart. And apparently my son needs regular brick sizes because all his Legos were weird. But it came right off the Legos and everything came out of it, even the real acorn top. I was afraid it would stick to it, but it did not, and it came smoothly out of the boxes. So here I'm gonna go ahead and make the acorns so you could see. I am using UV resin. I decided to go ahead and try that because the molds are pretty clear and I thought the UV light could get through since it feels like the same consistency as some of the molds that I've purchased. So I wanted to give it a try. And here I'm putting some glitter for the top piece of the acorn and I put a little bit of clear on the bottom piece. And in one I'm adding little butterfly uh, glitter, and the other one I'm going to put a tiny flower with a leaf. And now I'm filling the top of the acorns. And then I cure it under the UV light. I probably did it for like 3 or 4 minutes. And then I check it, and I like to turn my molds over. I've noticed that it makes a difference because the light will get on the back, through the back, and help cure that part a little bit. So that's what they look like. I know it's hard to see because of the camera. I should have zoomed in more. But everything turned out matte, which I expected because the top part is an actual acorn and they are matted, and the bottom part I made with polymer clay and it was not shiny. So if you make a mold out of something that's not shiny, it will turn out matte. But that's fine because I always put a layer of UV resin over my pendants to make them nice and shiny. So it was not a big deal. And here what I'm doing is I just set the bottoms on top of the mold, put a little bit of UV resin on top, and I'm positioning the tops so I could put them together. And then I cure it, and now I am drilling the hole in the top. And then once that's drilled, I take a piece of wire and I put a little bit of UV resin on the tip of the wire and I insert it into the hole that I just drilled, and I will cure that under the UV light. And once those are on, I take the wire and I bend it, and I use those clips. I got those from Harbor Freight. They're pretty cheap. And I clip it onto that, and I take a cheap paintbrush from the dollar store. Uh, I use it to spread the UV resin around to spread a thin layer. And I do take my time with this. This is sped up to 400. Um, but I look and I use the light a lot to see if I missed any spots because the shine of the light will show you if you have any flaws in it at all. So I go around it quite a bit and I touch it up and I keep moving it so that the resin doesn't glob up in one particular spot. It takes some practice, but it's a nice way to cover a whole piece. And then I turn on the light and I rotate it. I slowly rotate it until the resin is just a little bit hard, and then I can leave it under the light and let it fully cure. And here I am just I'm putting the pendant together with the little jump loops and the lobster clasp and all that kind of good stuff. And that is the finished pieces. I think they turned out adorable. One of them I coated the top with UV resin and the other one I did not. So one of them, the top of it is a little matte, and I kind of like that better. I think it turned out adorable. Um, so I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.